Thank you. Thank you for coming, and thank you for WIDER for this wonderful conference, and for inviting me. I'm going to talk about adoptability of social assistance policies, or actually policies in general, through 4 dimensions of viability. This is sort of an presentation of let's say, an idea paper. So this is a sort of a rough draft that I've been developing. So I'm very interested in hearing your critique and ideas, but be kind. So I have used these 4 dimensions of viability before to assess or examine the global proliferation of conditional cash transfers. But here the idea is to develop a more general sort of framework. So this is still very much a work in progress and comes from a sociological perspective. Okay, so the factors shaping policy adoption have been a focus of interest for policy scholars for decades. However, the question of why some policies are adopted and some are not has received less attention in policy scholarship. So here I introduce a framework for analyzing the adoptability or perhaps feasibility of social assistance policies or policies in general. I propose that analyzing the characteristics or qualities of a policy through 4 dimensions of viability offers an insightful framework for integrating both structural and actor-centered factors, as well as internal and external determinants of policy adoption that have been introduced in previous literature. And I propose that this framework could be used in examining the prospects of policy adoption and implementation ex ante, as well as factors for successful and unsuccessful policy adoption ex post. Good. So actor-oriented perspectives have emphasized individuals and groups shaping policy adoption, such as policymakers, interest groups, coalitions, etc., etc. Focus has been on agency, policy preferences, strategic behavior, coalition building, etc., etc. No need to go into these different perspectives here, but actors influence how policymakers understand policy issues, what solutions they could consider legitimate. Different types of problems emerge, policies are introduced, and new policy windows open, etc., etc. So focus on actors here. Structure-oriented perspectives have emphasized institutional, economic, and social constraints and opportunities. There's been a focus on institutions, political and administrative arrangements, socioeconomic conditions. For example, how past decisions shape future options in path dependencies and policy legacies, for example. How different domestic interest group agendas and political struggles, how they shape policy decisions within certain institutions. So very much sort of domestic structural determinants of policy adoption. Then perspectives emphasizing transnational influences, policy diffusion, interested in patterns of policy diffusion and sort of the qualities of the countries or jurisdictions that adopt policies, the democratic levels of democracy, GDP, etc., etc. Then policy transfer, a more actor-oriented perspective, shifting the analytical focus from these patterns of diffusion to sort of intentional processes in which these policies or ideas spread or are diffused. And drivers that have been drivers of policy adoption here have been the central 4 have been learning, coercion, competition, and emulation. So not an exhaustive list, not a comprehensive list, but to give an idea of sort of different perspectives to policy adoption. And these perspectives offer insights into determinants of policy adoption process from different perspectives, However, I make the argument here that a more comprehensive framework would be needed to better understand why is it that certain policies are adopted and implemented and others are not. And I make the argument that that we could develop this framework around the concept of viability. And so I propose that shifting the perspective from these perspectives that I just introduced to the qualities or characteristics of the policy itself, it's possible to incorporate these determinants into the analysis. I'm not taking credit of this viability business here, but I give credit to Peter A. Hall, whose analysis of the conditions that led to Keynesian economic ideas being adopted as policies in different countries in his Power of Economic Ideas, Keynesianism across nations. In the conclusions, he introduces three modes of or dimensions of viability, and states that a new set of he talks about economic ideas, but I'm talking about policy ideas or policies in general here, must be seen to have a minimum level of viability on all three of these dimensions: economic, administrative, and political, in order to be incorporated into policy. To him, economic viability is related to how the idea fits with the contemporary economic problems and the prevalent economic theory. Administrative viability refers to the state's perceived capacity to implement the new policy, and political viability to how the idea fits with the goals and interests of the dominant political parties and its appeal in the broader political arena. So I make the suggestion that these conditions could be modified to serve as heuristic tools in assessing the qualities or characteristics of social assistance policies in different contexts. Important here is this is context related. So in modifying Hall's terminology to refer to policy viability, administrative viability, and political viability, but I propose that we also need to add a fourth dimension here, which is symbolic viability. So here, these four dimensions of viability could be used to assess the prospects of a given policy being adopted. Perhaps if we look at globally proliferating policies, we could do that, but also look at policies created in different contexts or adopted elsewhere. We can do this context bound. So here the policy viability would refer to the policy's apparent capacity to resolve a relevant set of problems. So to what extent can the policy be regarded as a legitimate response to the identified challenges? How the theoretical and normative foundations of the policy relate to prevalent approaches to economy, poverty reduction, and social protection. For example, would implementing the policy require a broader paradigm shift, for example, making it perhaps less likely that it gets adopted, or can it be fit to the sort of the existing paradigmatic ideas on economic poverty reduction and social protection? Is it anchored in appealing expert knowledge, either theoretical or empirical? By administrative viability, I refer here to the presumable capacity of the administration to implement the new policy, the relative costs of implementing and running the policy, for example, available funding, does it fit with budget constraints, then the technical complexity of the policy, for example, necessary policy infrastructure needed, the data needed, the technology needed to design and execute the policy. Political viability the fit between the policy and its presumed resonance with the governing political parties, the political affiliations and legitimacy of the policymakers, interest groups and coalitions that promote the policy or claim to have created the policy or designed the policy, political support among key actors such as elected officials, interest groups, the public, the malleability or flexibility of the policy. Can it be supported by a wide range of political parties or politicians? Can it serve as a coalition magnet? Can it be molded to fit different interests? Is it compatible with prior institutional arrangements? Here the path dependencies and policy legacies come into play. Then finally, symbolic viability, by which I mean the meanings that a policy carries and the extent to which these meanings become socially accepted and resonate with broader values and narratives. Constructed policy narratives are central here. So, for example, the perceived origins of the policy, is it considered to come from leading countries, culturally similar countries, or otherwise reference countries that are worth emulating and are considered sort of peers. Who are the actors or institutions that promote the policy, the legitimacy of these actors. Media coverage, for example, is it considered is the media coverage preferential or positive? Is the policy receiving media attention, and how is it portrayed in the media? And then other meanings and associations that the policy carries. Sort of, has it been considered a best practice that's been adopted elsewhere? Are international organizations promoting it as a best practice? And other cultural, context-bound cultural elements that are associated with the policy. So these are the 4 dimensions that I've included in the framework. These are not to be considered sort of essentialistic or rigid categories. The political alignments can change. The perceived the meanings that a policy carries can change, but this is the framework that I've now come up with, and I end the presentation here. I'm very interested in hearing whether you have some thoughts on its usefulness. Thank you.